Welcome to More Music Please, a Quarantine Beat. I'm your host, NK. Join me and my guest as we explore how the music industry is staying busy and keeping connected during lockdown, and also just talking about whatever. Let's get started. On the line with me this afternoon, it's Ruthy Ungar and Mike Merenda. You know them as Mike and Ruthy. You know them from the Mammals. You love them. You miss seeing them live. Thank you for coming on the show today, guys.
Yay.
Hi, MK.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So what's been going on in Mammal World? I know you put out a release with my dear friend Stephanie from Soundly. How's that going?
We love Stephanie and Soundly. She says hello, by the way. I was just writing back and forth with her today. I know you guys are close, but it's been obviously a surreal time to release music into the world, at least on the industry front, as you can probably attest to as well. But in terms of putting music into a culture that seems to desperately need something, it feels really good that we do have some new music that, in an uncanny sense, sort of speaks to this moment in ways that we couldn't even predict.
Yeah, we met Stephanie for the very first time in February in a hotel at this event called Folk Alliance, which is basically hundreds of sweaty musicians pressed close against each other in the hallways of a conference hotel.
I feel like you guys met under similar circumstances. Am I correct?
Yeah, professional conference world.
Yeah, it was like we're in New Orleans, and it was just zany and wild, and we met her, I think, at 1 a.m. playing our very last showcase, which we just played as a duo in this room with like barely anyone there, and everyone was wasted, and it was like, not the moment you picture meeting your amazing teammate for your release, your distributor and whatever. But it was just so fantastic to look back on that, even a month later when, well, I guess that was late January, wasn't it? But
it's definitely the greatest thing to ever come out of a Folk Alliance conference for us. Whenever we go, and it's actually come a long way, and it's become a sort of a wonderful event, but it's a lot of time and travel and expense to get you and your band there, and a lot of late nights, and you wonder what's really coming from it other than some camaraderie. But to make a new relationship like that, I actually thought she really didn't like us at first, because it was 2 a.m. on Saturday night, and everybody had had a few drinks, and we're playing this sort of like precious, quiet duo set. And she and whoever she was with, I think it was the guy from CD Baby, they were a little chatty in the back. And I'm like, oh, she's just not digging it. And of course,
she loved it.
Totally digging it. And she's become like our biggest champion in the months that folled.
Yeah,
that's really funny.
I was going to say, just looking back on that, weeks later, as we're quarantined and have no imagined gatherings in the near future, it's just it makes it even more surreal, and lucky that we got to make that connection then right before we were launching the album. And like weeks later, she was helping us release our first single in March, right? Or April?
Yeah, and having her, Ruthy and I are sort of a two-person operation, and we do all of our own publicity and booking and art design and producing and really you name it. And to have someone else come into our fold who was so creative and energetic and positive, she just put a lot of wind in our sails, sort of right when we needed it, because when all the tours got canceled and all the sales seemed to be evaporating, she just had the right energy to help us all sort of see it through for each other. So we can't say enough good things about Stephanie and Soundly.
Yeah, she is an absolute dynamo, and I'm really glad that you guys made that connection. And that's funny to hear that, you haven't necessarily always gotten those kind of connections out of those events, because, I've been at similar events on the other side of things, watching band after band after band be, put on stage and gassed up, and, oh, these guys are so great, they're so wonderful, but you see, 50 bands over the course of 3 days, and how many of them can you really remember? And I do sometimes wonder, after those events, like, is it, is there a certain, like, deflation that you sometimes feel where it's like, well, that was a lot of work and stress, and who knows if anything's going to come out of it?
Yes, certainly. I shouldn't say that's the only thing that's ever come out of it.
I feel a little bit differently. Like, for me, organizing the Folk Alliance thing was so much work beforehand. So it was actually really fun to get there and to do it, and to actually, feel it's sort of like when we host the Hoot, and you're just working, going like, whoa, this is an insane amount of work. Is this really worth doing every year? And then, the minute you get there, you're having a great time. And, we've played a bunch of cool festivals that are, more far-flung locations that the organizers of the festival wouldn't probably have booked us without seeing us in person. So that's fun, like Colorado or California and stuff like that. It's been fun to connect.
It's a gathering of the tribe for sure.
It's fun. And I mean, it's sort of like so many things these days, it's a trade-off, we decided we were going to do it every other year. So to us, that's like, financially and energetically the right balance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, in new COVID times, of course, you mentioned the Hoot, which made me sad because I wish there was going to be a summer Hoot and a winter Hoot as well. What are you feeling as musicians about, the possibility of small distanced outdoor shows or drive-in shows? Are you considering doing anything like that?
That's a fantastic question. I really want to experience some of these things firsthand without actually being the band,
Yes.
to kind of get that experience from an audience perspective or a venue perspective to really feel it. Like what we're going to do for the Summer Hoot this year is broadcast live streaming series of short sets, maybe interspersed with some archival footage from the Hoot stage. That's the goal.
Cool.
So there will be no audience unless you count the crew and maybe the band who played before you that's still hanging out.
Mm-hmm. But you'll still get some of that outdoor Ashokan energy, hopefully, even, transmitting through the wires.
Yeah, at this point, the novelty of seeing everyone's living room is maybe slightly wearing off. So let's see, a stage, like we just broadcast a show from Bearsville Theater, which was really our first time playing with our band since March. So it was incredible. Just that first hit of a snare drum near me, sent chills up my spine. I was like, yes.
It was the greatest sound check ever.
Yeah,
just getting to
sure.
be relaxed and play for a while. And we have this new record. We actually played the entire 10-song album plus the bonus disc. So that was the set. I also enjoyed knowing what the set list was going to be. And we haven't played this stuff with the guys outside of the studio very much. So it was a real celebration for us a couple weeks ago. And of course, hometown reopening of Bearsville Theater, Woodstock, New York. It felt good.
We did have a handful of friends there. So you were asking about distance, small crowd things. And, we're testing the waters. Like that was, we didn't have anything that, wasn't open to the public. And it's just so challenging because we've spent 20 years in this business where you're just pushing and pushing to get more and more people. And it just feels so backwards to have an event that you're anti-promoting. You're like, wow, we hope not too many people know about this gig. It's just it's just weird. There's a certain awkwardness about, hoping your fans don't show up in droves.
Yeah, of course. And I've talked to, Andy Frasco and John Ferrara about this a little bit too, how it's so much of the live music experience is that energy that comes from a big crowd of people and a big crowd of people close together. And, I was always, as a concert goer, a fan of being in the middle of the crush and really feeling everybody's energy and dancing and getting sweaty with everybody, which are all the exact things that we cannot do right now.
Singing along, that's another, we, that's a big part of our show. And if it feels like that's, putting our fans at a risk to ask them to open their mouth and sing, that's just, it just almost feels not worth doing. But we did do a second show after Bearsville last week where we went to Connecticut and played for a big group of people in a park. And they were spaced out. There was, I guess, spray painted boxes out on the grass, which worked pretty well. And it didn't feel too weird that people were spread out throughout the park and, felt a little more low key because you could have your masks off because you were distanced and outdoors and you could sing along. And there were definitely fans who said, oh, we got put way in the back and we're so far away. And when they came up to say hi, there were volunteers kind of pushing them to stay 25 feet from the band. And there was still some awkwardness. But the show itself felt better than I expected.
Yeah.
Well, and again, just getting to play with our band has been
Yeah.
a gift from the gods that
Yeah,
we
totally.
didn't, we're lucky that the two of us are a band in and of ourselves, but we have this beautiful band. I mean, we made the record with a 9-piece band, and we couldn't really wait to sort of trot that out and celebrate that in the world. So we, our compromise is we can't obviously bring everybody from all points of the country right now, but locally we have a sextet, a 6-piece, which is Ruthy, myself, Conrad Meissner on drums, and then the 3 members of the Restless Age, Will, Brandon, and Lee, and we sort of fold together and have been performing as a 6-piece with double drums, and
Great.
that is a novelty as well, to do the double drum thing live.
Yeah.
Yeah, the double drum thing is awesome. How does that feel different for you guys?
I mean, it's really funny because we're not like getting together to really rehearse because everybody's trying to distance and just sort of like minimally get together and play. And sound check was kind of, quick, but they're just so good. And the songs, we've been listening to the recordings for over a year and kind of obsessing over these songs. So they just both fell together and just did it. There were a couple moments in sound check where one would say to the other, like, hey, why don't you do that Tom thing? No, you take it. Okay, I'll do it. But you do that other Phil, It's really cool. They're both like the nicest guys. And just, it was really wonderful to watch them work together. Actually, really cool.
Those two guys actually do have what I think is a really special relationship, and whenever I have Conrad involved in an interview like this, he always sort of like brushes it aside, and I think it's because he looks at Lee as a peer at this point in life and as professional musicians and all. But Conrad grew up when he was a young musician playing at the Falcon, when it was just a house concert series before it was a venue in Marlborough. And Lee was just a little like 8-year-old curly-headed kid behind the soundboard, like learning how to do sound. And Lee said, years ago, you're playing with Conrad Meissner. He was always my favorite drummer who would come up here and play. And so to see them now sort of interlocking as peers, they really do have a special... They have a style that's very complementary, and they both listen very deeply, and they're the type of drummer that loves to leave space. And sometimes people say, like, double drums, that's going to be so loud. It's almost quieter because they're listening to each other so intently and leaving room for the other one.
True.
It's really cool. It's this like, really big, fat bed to sort of sit on. I mean, really, it pushes a lot of air.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Did you have both of them at the Bearsville show?
Yeah.
Both of the shows we did. That was our big summer tour. It was Bearsville and this free concert in the park in Connecticut, and it was both the sextet.
Hey, you know what? Count it. It's more than a lot of bands are getting to do. So yeah,
seriously. And it's weird. Like after being home and barely going anywhere, it did feel like really intense. Like it was like a lot of stimulation, like social and
even physically. Did you find that like your body, like, those muscles, when we used to do this day in and day out, like I forgot that little part under my shoulder blade, from strumming a guitar for 3 hours,
loading and unloading amps out of a van or
whatever
like
it
the
is.
whole thing, like all the routine was like, oh yeah. and then there are differences, like honestly wearing a mask when it's like 90 degrees and you're loading and sound checking wearing a mask is like crappy. It's like stifling and uncomfortable, and it makes you constantly aware, and it's what you have to do. But touching
exactly.
I touched a lot of things, touched mic stands, touched cables and pedals and doorknobs,
and you're thinking about that, I'm sure, more than you ever did.
Oh yeah, I was not a germaphobe before, and I wouldn't say that I am now, but I don't know, I'm definitely more aware of it. Like I was like, I couldn't wait to wash my hands after that sound check,
Totally. I know. I always had I just kind of happened to have a little bottle of hand sanitizer in my car. Even in the before times, it was just like a thing that I had for leaving the gym or whatever. And now it's become like, all right, back in the car, hand sanitizer. Like, I got to actually get more.
Yeah. I was going to say that thing's probably running low.
Yeah, it definitely is. Wow. Well, I'm glad that you've had, the opportunity to play a little bit with your band and kind of, have that sense of normalcy and socialization too. I'm really excited about the topic, Mike, that you brought up today. I was like, so what do you want to talk about? And you threw out a bunch of ideas, which were all good, but the word friends caught my eye because this is such a funny and sad and isolating time, and we're all, I mean, there's opportunities to see some of our friends, and I've been able to see some of my friends in outdoor settings and safe settings, but it's
Totally.
certainly not like it was. And yeah, so I really love the idea of just talking about friends and friendship right now. So
love
thank
it.
you for
Yeah.
suggesting that.
Totally.
You know what you just made me think? It's almost like you have more one-on-one friendships now because you really don't see a group at the same time very much.
Yeah.
So like all my different friends, maybe a couple, I talk to them both, but even then it's like I'm usually like texting with one person, or like
Yeah.
one or two people come over and we like go for a walk, and or something. It's interesting. It's like, yeah, it's splintering that group mentality into maybe more special individual relationships in a way. It's almost like a metaphor for like when you're in Zoom and you send like a private chat to one person. You can chat the whole group, or you can chat
Totally.
one person, but you can't chat like 3 people in Zoom. It's just
Right.
not a feature. So it's like, it's kind of like that now. It's like we can broadcast to the world, or we can call our one friend.
Yeah, the one-on-one thing. Totally. And I think, it's maybe given us all a deeper understanding for, our social connections and our network, our communities, because we don't get to see them as much, and they feel so much more precious now. And, I've reached out to some people that I didn't talk to as much. You know what I mean? Like I would kind of rekindle these connections that had maybe lapsed a little bit, because all of a sudden it was like, all of my connections feel distant. So like none
Right.
of them feel that distant in a way.
Right. It's like a great equalizer.
Yeah.
This time it's
Yeah.
been a lot of like rebooting that people are experiencing, I think, during this time. I think that speaks to that as well.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think about our kids who are 8 and 12 right now. And, their life is their friends, It's
Right.
interesting to see them rely on FaceTime or, Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever it is to feel like they have a social life.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't have kids, so I hadn't even considered that, like, yeah, kid friendship is like a whole other thing. That's got to be so hard for them, because kid friendship is so based around like being in each other's faces and like doing,
Yeah.
outdoor physical or wrestling. I don't know what kids do. Do they wrestle?
I think so. Yeah. Well, our son had a friend over yesterday for like a couple of hours to like swim at my dad's pool, and it was hard. Like I at a certain point, we didn't really want to be at the pool anymore, even though that was like kind of a perfect like distance hang. But it's like, well, do we go back to the house? It's hot. Like it's a little cooler inside, but is that safe? Like just
Yeah.
it's just not fun to navigate that,
Yeah.
But it was nice to see them joking with each other, and it's I worry a little bit that for kids they're maybe becoming a little more socially awkward because they're not thrown into it. But our kids luckily have been, for their whole lives up to this spring, very much thrown into social situations. So
Yeah.
I think they'll bounce back. But it, even for us, it's like I hang out with my own mom. I sometimes don't know exactly how to behave, and that feels so weird, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what about you guys? You like me, you are, several years out of college at this point. What is your community kind of like? Do you have, still some of your college friends, high school friends? Do you have friends that you made as adults? Like, what does your community look like?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think I might be sort of in a minority when I think about my circle of friends, because I still have a large group of very close-knit friends who I go all the way back to grade school with, certainly
Oh,
high
wow.
school. It's partly because I was in a lot of bands, and being in a band is really a bonding experience that tends, once the band sort of breaks up and moves on, you always have that in common with certain people. So some of the guys and gals I'm in touch with still are people from my young music life in New Hampshire. But also my high school, I think, was sort of an anomaly. There were a couple tragedies that occurred that really helped us bond over some classmates who who passed away before their time. And when you go through that together as a community, there's that extra bond as well. So between the bands, and I played a lot of athletics, and those friendships were strong. And then the tragedies that we sort of all got each other through, I've really kept in touch with, it seems like a dozen of my really old school friends. And that's really important to me. I love going back to New Hampshire and trying to connect with folks. And but as I get older, I realize that's not sort of the norm for a lot of people. They don't have a ton of friends from their youth, maybe a couple.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I grew up around here, so I run into friends who I remember from that era. And, I guess because of social media, I'm still in touch with some of those friends too. And I was in the theater world starting as a teenager. The Woodstock Youth Theater was this incredible coming together of kids from Kingston and Saugerties and Onteora and Coleman and all different high schools. So it was like a lot of us didn't necessarily fit in our school, but had this great social network, if you will, as theater geeks. And actually at Bearsville Theater is where we did a lot of our shows. So I'm still really close with at least 4 or 5 of my friends from that time, and some of them live nearby, some of them not, but we definitely stay in touch. And
that's funny. Yeah. Theater is definitely a lifelong bonding experience.
Yeah.
I have a kind of an eerily similar background where I was a theater kid in school, and I actually went to 2 high schools at the same time. I had like my regular school, and then I went to this was in Connecticut, and they had this like magnet school for arts and performing arts that I went to for like half the day. And it was awesome. And, like you, I kind of like found my community of like theater weirdos and like have kind of stayed connected to some of them over the years. Like those are the high school friends that I'm still in touch with for the most part, is like, kids that I met there. But I don't stay closely in touch with too many high school friends, too many college friends. And it's really just in the last like few years, of finally like putting down roots and living in Kingston for a while and like really kind of meeting people and connecting, that I finally have this great like, adult friend group going. And I know that people talk about all the time how hard it is to make friends as an adult, like in your late 20s and 30s. And I just feel very, very lucky that I do have that.
That's awesome.
I think Kingston is also a unique community for forging friendships. But I mean, I've never lived in Kingston. Of course, Ruth, you grew up here in West Hurley. MK, you live in Kingston. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. Ruthie, you think so?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because like growing up, you always like look down on where you're from, and then I moved back and had to like look at it with new eyes.
Yeah, well, it changed a little bit too, I'm sure.
Like I remember feeling like, because there's not a college right here, there's this like big gap of people of that age. So it was like kids just getting desperate to get out, or the ones that never got out, and then like older folks who decided to move here. And well, of course now everybody's trying to move here.
Yeah,
but
I know.
I don't know. I do love this area a lot, and I think when you were talking about making friends as an adult, I was thinking about all our friends that are a community that's not a geographic community, that's like the music community that maybe we run into at Folk Alliance or at folk festivals when we travel. And that's really a big thing that I miss this year. That's sort of like how we started the Hoot, is really because we would go to these amazing community festivals and just really be thinking like, wow, we should move to Michigan. Oh man, we should move to Oregon. Like, this festival rocks, we should move to, and then we just realized like it's the fact that people put that love and energy into the festival started it, and now it's a magnet for people, like-minded, fun, people to get together, and like we should just do that at home. And there's plenty of cool people around here. It was really when O Positive started too. It was like the same year, or maybe we were the year after, but we were really inspired by what they were doing. And you just have to start it. It's like striking a match in the darkness. Not that I'm saying everything was dark before then. I'm just saying like sometimes you just have to build a fire if you want something. You can't just wait around. Just just run over to somebody else's fire.
I'm really, really glad you brought up O Positive because I love it so much, and it's one of the most, unique and awesome things about this area and Kingston in particular.
Right.
Although now, of course, there's O Positive in Poughkeepsie, and they've spread it to, I think, the Berkshires, which is wonderful. But it started as this Kingston thing, and yeah, it's always every year since I've lived here, I have participated in some way in O Positive, whether I was part of like someone's performance. I have a friend who maybe Anna Hafner. She makes these incredible costumes. Yes, you know that.
She's so amazing. Oh my gosh.
Aren't they amazing? Her. And for many years, I would be one of the people in the costumes, at various events. I did it
like
at
a huge Daisy walking around or.
Yeah. Like the thing with the moon head, like they're amazing. And it was so much fun. And then, I worked at the radio station and I would be part of the live broadcast for that. And I've played at O Positive with my various bands. And like, I always am involved in some way. And then when I'm not, doing it, I'm running around experiencing it. And it's always so cool because there's so many people I know who are involved in some way. So it's like you stop by one place and see your friend painting a mural, and you go another place and see your friend's band, and somewhere else your friend is, it's so cool.
Yeah.
It really is unique. I've always described it to people as an exchange of goodwill, which I think our culture could use more of. Ruthie and I have started bandying about this term, the karma economy. And that's really where O Positive was founded. I also love it especially because, as a kid who grew up loving music but also playing a lot of sports, there isn't always a huge crossover in those worlds. But I met Joe Concra and Jonathan Donahue, Joe who started O Positive and Jonathan of Mercury Rev in a hockey locker room in Saugerties. So the fact that those worlds all overlapped for me was sort of extra icing on the cake.
Yeah, and I don't know if they use the slogan anymore, but the initial year they said O Positive, bartering the art of medicine for the medicine of art.
Yes.
Which I just love so much because I love thinking of medicine as an art. It's kind of a beautiful thing to think about. And art as medicine, for real, both of those things make me feel good. And meeting all those great health practitioners that, want to give. And it's interesting to see how it shifted when like Obamacare came around. And suddenly it was like, okay, well, how about supplemental, like acupuncture, massage? We can still give health services that you would not have access to. So.
And also thinking about it in these times as we are, the medicine of art, so much of it at O Positive is the communal element of people getting together. It is that weekend in October where you're going to run into some people from the community that you might not see the rest of the year because there's an event, because it's pay what you want, because people are encouraged to take part. And there's such a wide array, like you said, MK, of like there's murals, there's artists, there's performance artists, there's bands, there's lectures, there's panel discussions. There's sort of something for everybody, and that the fact that there's no set paywall, I think, is genius. And that was something we stole for the Hoot. I mean, the Hoot is just us stealing all our favorite ideas from festivals and putting them into practice. But the pay what you want thing, it's definitely a leap of faith. But O Positive, sort of led the way.
Totally.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it is always my favorite weekend in October. And do you know what's happening this year? Is there any plan to do any kind of anything, or are we just kind of waiting and seeing what happens?
I think probably waiting and seeing what happens. Yeah, I haven't heard from the official channels yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the upsides, I think, to the fact that we're in this weird time is that you can plan something pretty last minute and people just they figure it out like 2 minutes before or 2 weeks before the festival. You throw up a page and everyone's like, all right, we'll tune in.
Well, no one has to,
right. Totally. We got nothing else going on.
Right. Okay, I need to be in front of my computer in 2 days. Okay, I think I can work that out.
Yeah. And I think no one wants anything planned too far out because they know that the everything could shift between now and then. That's what's so challenging for schools right now, is because they're asking people to commit to all of third grade, and who knows what it's going to be like even in October. So it's a time for making it's a time for making short-term plans, modular plans, flexible plans. Mm-hmm. It's a time for being as imaginative and creative and not pinned down as you can be. And that really is challenging for some people and exciting for others.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
self-employed artists, I think we're pretty used to rolling with the punches and improvising and making lemonade out of lemons and all that stuff. But, everybody's sort of being put to the test right now. So it's interesting to see how different people in different walks of life are, adjusting.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone had brought up social media briefly before, and I wanted to come back to that because it's an interesting topic in relation to the friendship topic as well. And of course, we're in this time where we're conducting so much of our lives via social media. And I think I personally, I was going to say we all do, but I guess I can only speak for myself. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I am an active Facebook and Instagram user. I don't do Twitter or really anything else, but, I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram for both myself and for my podcast. And, my dogs may or may not have their own Instagrams. But I definitely see the toxicity of it too. And I find myself, especially, on days when I'm particularly anxious about the state of the world, just kind of obsessively scrolling and looking at all the doom and gloom. But I also, it's a main way that I stay connected to people. So where are you guys kind of at on the social media thing?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Just becoming more aware of the trauma that media is capable of causing. And of course, I think our generation, certainly myself, I definitely grew up with a TV in my house almost always on. And I'm a little bit numb to it in the sense that I expect it to be there. And the fact that we can sort of curate our own channels and feeds is complicated and interesting. And of course, I don't want to, like you said, you get a lot of information through social media, especially like with what's going on in Portland right now. And I can't be on the other side of the country and have, boots on the ground there, but it's a way to stay connected. But also I've been trying to protect myself because I think we're all very vulnerable right now.
Yeah.
And media it's a powerful form. And as musicians sort of sequestered at home, we've sort of had to become media companies. I mean, that's what your feed really is as you're releasing content. And so I've been more cognizant of what we're putting out there and the type of messages we're putting out there, but also the ones that I'm absorbing. And sometimes it's unavoidable. And like you said, I always have this excuse, well, I sort of have to be on Facebook because that's a big part of where we promote our music and all that. And if it wasn't for that, I'd just leave it behind. And maybe there's some truth to that. But there's obviously a lot of good uses of the technology. But especially in the last month or so, I've been trying to be a little more protective about and just aware of the way it affects me and how that sort of unfolds throughout the day and week. And then, seeing how my kids getting embroiled in this to some degree. And but the word I never thought of before was trauma. And I think it is traumatic. I think it can be very traumatic to expose yourself to uninvited media.
Yes.
I totally feel what Mike's saying and also what you said, MK. And I think to a certain extent, what you see in your feed, because it's so tailored to you, I have, a love-hate relationship with that, right? Because, well, wouldn't it be nice to see things that appeal to me? And wouldn't it be nice to see things that are of interest to me or that resonate with me? And doesn't that make sense? But at the same time, if you take the bird's eye view and you look at all the people here receiving a different personalized feed, it's pretty grotesque what that ultimately manifests. And
really deepening the division. I know.
Correct.
And I feel the same way where like sometimes I've kind of over the years like pared down my Facebook friends list, for example, and like if somebody said something, bigoted or anything, I would just kind of unfriend them because I didn't want to deal with them.
Right.
And now I'm kind of wondering, like, should I have kept those people kind of around so I could see what they're saying and maybe even, they can see what I'm saying and consider, a different perspective. And instead I've really contributed to just like deepening this chasm between these two ways of thinking.
Yeah. That's exactly where I'm at right now is like, valuing those that disagree in my social media circle, because otherwise I'm just clueless, and I have that same concern. And I also think about the power of manifestation, of imagery manifesting things. Like, I posted something the other day and somebody said, oh, that's not a real photo and that's wrong, and and maybe they're even right, I don't know. But my point was like, well, to a certain extent, the idea of fake news is, well, I guess fake news can turn into real news. That's what's so, it's the most horrifying thing about a fake news story, or a fake photo in a news story, or a fake fact in a news story, whatever it is not that it's fake and that people would believe it. It's that it is made true by the power of manifestation. It's like you show this picture enough, or you say this phrase enough, or you know, it just starts to become part of our consciousness, and our brains are really susceptible to this crap. It's like, it's not much we can do about that. And I don't know
well, what you can do about it is try and combat it with whatever you deem to be, you know, the powerful, more enlightened messages. I mean, because
I feel like I do that my only successful attempts at doing that is through songs. Right. Because I think if you just do more like social media posts of like what you think is real and what you think is true, and commenting on posts, I think that has value, but I feel like I still at that moment am embroiled in this beastly system, and I am maybe even feeding it just by giving it energy. And the moments where I feel my message is less tainted by the vehicle is when I can just like put out an album, or put out a song, or a video for an album. Like the song East Side, West Side that is on the record, we made sort of a crowdsourced video with a bunch of different people dancing, and me outside and Mike on our roof, and like all our bandmates from home. We put it out on Earth Day, so late April. Did you see that video, MK?
No, I have to.
All right, I'm gonna send it to you. It's like me wearing a yellow dress in front of some forsythia, so it's very pop and yellow image. You'll know when I send it to you. That's the one. And I guess what was cool about it was like we put it on Facebook and we put some money behind it, right, to like boost it. And because it's a very it's a song promoting positivity and unity, and the lyrics, from the north side to the south side, we could be stronger than ever before. From the east side to the west side, from the shore to the shining shore. You know, it's like very positive, and, you know, we're in it all together kind of vibe. And so if you don't listen closely, especially to the third verse where I'm talking about like social justice issues and stuff, like if you're just, sort of skimming it, your politics,
it's apolitical.
It's apolitical. That was the goal. The goal was to write a song with very little that would turn off people who disagree with me, just so we can all agree on just any little shred of positivity and unity.
I love that. I think that's genius, honestly. And that's what we need to get back to, is focusing on what unites us as opposed to what divides us. Of course, having said that, I realize that could come off as kind of a privileged statement, because what divides us is literally people being killed and, you know, people being rounded up into unmarked vans. And like, I'm not, it's hard to say that without feeling like I'm, downplaying the urgency of the issues that we're facing right now. And I'm certainly not trying to do that, but we are so deeply divided right now that to hear even about a song that's just trying to unite us again is like, yes, more of that, please.
But the boost on that song, it got us a lot of like comments and likes and shares from totally new people, which is obviously exciting. And then it was really apparent that many of them were like outside of my normal social media sphere, and maybe outside of my normal lefty political sphere. So it was interesting to see some of the comments, and even some people who friended me personally, and then would like wig out on something that I posted on my page. And it's like, but that's good. Like, to me, that's more success of doing it. But it is
totally,
you have to steel yourself for that. You have to feel up for it. that day,
Yeah.
and again, that's from a place of privilege, isn't it? Because I get to choose what day I want to throw myself in.
Yeah, exactly.
And deal with it.
Yeah, the echo chamber is a very comforting place to be, and I am very guilty of just hanging out there, but I am trying to hang out there less. I am trying to, engage in conversations that make me uncomfortable. I'm I'm not confrontational. I get very anxious when people are mad at me, so I've very much avoided these kind of conversations over the years. And I'm really trying to the least I can do is step up a little bit and, defend the position that I think is correct and right and morally just. So
yeah, that reminds me of something that came to me the other day. Like a lot of people are ending their, their show or their podcast or whatever with stay safe, everybody, hope you're staying healthy and safe. And I said that the other day, and then I was and I hope you're also maybe choosing moments to risk your own personal safety to protect others. Maybe, our own personal safety is a bunk goal really overall. There are times that we have to not put that first right now.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah, likewise. We need to get back in the streets. I attended several protests, but I haven't been in a couple of weeks, and I know that the fight is not over. So yeah, we got to get back out there. And if COVID is the concern, it seems like
right.
It's been fine. Everybody was wearing masks at these protests, and I think there's been no evidence that they caused any kind of spike. So
isn't that awesome? That's it's enough time has passed that I guess that's that. I think people were saying maybe there's a tiny little bump happening right now that may be the result of 4th of July events.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah. So do you have, it's funny, we've kind of gotten onto this topic, which I am always down to talk about, and I think it's important to have as many conversations about as possible. Do you have any friends who don't agree with you, who say are Trump supporters, are right wing? I know that a lot of us have family members that, we are still connected to, but I feel like a lot of people have ended friendships with people who don't agree with them. So do you have any people that you consider friends that you don't agree with on, the current political climate?
It seems like more of the extended family. I was really surprised to learn that maybe a majority of my extended family were Trump supporters. Which I knew some were, but not to the extent that I was made aware of recently. That was sort of shocking. In our circle of friends, I don't feel like so much, although maybe there's someone I'm not thinking of. Certainly people who are trying to exist outside of the left-right paradigm.
Yeah.
And that is some interesting water to explore. Especially because there's such a glut of information out there. Everybody's getting it from different places. Some of it's very smart, very well written. But, sources that you're not even cognizant of, and people who are close friends that are really absorbing this stuff. And then there's a little bit of catch up involved, and you don't want to dismiss it out of hand. And there's just so much to keep track of. So in terms of close friends who are just out and proud Trump supporters, not so much. Certainly fans, though, and Ruthy was sort of saying that with social media. There's some of our fans, some people who put a dozen hearts and stars in the comment of everything we post. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be a picture of a guitar or our kids or us on stage, and they're the first person to blow that up. And yet, if I go, what's this person all about? And I'm just horrified by the stuff that they share on their wall. And I've made this decision. I never anymore try to bicker or change anyone's mind on Facebook, or really even via email, in from the comfort of your own home and just your own little soapbox. I don't think anything productive. I don't think anyone ever posts something on Facebook in order to have their mind changed. That's not
True.
What the platform is for. It's really to maybe share information and stake your ground. But I don't see what good comes out of getting into the little pissing contest that happens almost instantaneously when something touchy is posted. So I try and find other ways of reaching that person or communicating, and maybe it can seem a little bit like circumventing or or chickening out, but I just don't see what positivity comes out of arguing with people online.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't even really know what the answer is, because I agree that most of the time you're not going to change somebody's mind by arguing with them on Facebook. And I've tried to have some of those conversations, and I always try to take the high road. Don't do any name calling, don't do any personal attacks, state my facts clearly and calmly, and link to the sources if it's relevant. And yet, even when you take that approach and you try to make it so inoffensive and so,
Right.
unimpeachable, like people will get so nasty immediately. Like I had this one interaction so I have a friend, I won't name any names, but I have a friend who has a family member who is a Trump supporter and was, commenting stuff on her page constantly. Every time she would post something, he would, come back with this right-wing propaganda. And she was like, MK, do you mind jumping in? Like, I know that you talk about this stuff on Facebook. Like, you're good with words. Can you talk to this guy? I was like, all right, I'll see what I can do. So I saw the post she was talking about, and he had basically, it was like in the middle of, the height of the beginning of the Black Lives Matter protests. And he was saying that, the protests were invalid because blocking roads was not a peaceful protest, was what he said. And he said some other stuff too, but I decided to start with that. And I replied to him and I was like, yes, it is. Like, that's a classic nonviolent protest tactic. What do you mean by saying that blocking roads isn't a peaceful protest? And his response was to call me a child, tell me to sit down, and say, God bless Trump, in all capitals.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I was like,
Sort of a
okay.
non-starter.
I even had somebody just yesterday, there was like this disagreement in a thread that I posted, and the first thing out of this guy's mouth was "get a life."
Yeah.
Like, not to me, but to like a nice friend of mine who was trying to clarify something, and I'm just like, if you open with "get a life," where are we going, really?
Yeah,
like,
like you
There's
don't
nowhere
want to
to
have
go.
a conversation.
Yeah, but like I said about some of these friends who are trying to operate outside of the left-right paradigm, I do find that really inspiring.
I almost feel like it's the people. We don't have any friends that I can think of that are like straight ahead mainstream right wingers, but I feel like we know some people who are so far left it's almost touching the right, and so far right it's almost touching the left. Like, to me, it's like the off the grid, like homeschool, grow your own, libertarian meets hippie. You know where I'm going here, maybe.
Totally.
Is that kind of what you're talking about, Mike? Like
some of that. It's also it's again like the media sources that I find that they're absorbing and like sharing with me, that they're just like off a lot of people's radar, but it's out there. But what you're saying is also true, and I think
I love that. I love where those things meet.
I do too.
I think it's really interesting stuff, and I love to read it. And I may not consider myself that far out, but I don't discount it.
The only thing the only red flag for me about because I'm all about the like grow your own garden, build your community, deep local, all of that. But I don't like the autonomy of it, because I think all of these systems and principles are the most efficient when people work together and build them together. I don't think it should be everybody in their shack with their shotgun in their garden. I don't think that's super productive. But like, look at what Radio Kingston's doing with the community radio station and the food hub, and trying to get, communication to the people and giving a platform to all these different voices locally. I guess the word I use is deep local. I just think deep local is the future of humanity, really, because the alternative is not sustainable. It's been proven. It's playing out in front of our eyes. But if you can care for where you live, which is sort of like what Pete Seeger's whole mission in life became, care about the river, care about where you are, act locally, think globally. It's not just like hippie bullshit. I think there's really something to the strength and resilience of local community and resources, and really being in it together. Not trying, the anti every man for himself hoarding instinct, which is part of that libertarian cliche.
Exactly.
But a lot of those tools and philosophies used in tandem, I think, are really, really powerful.
And I completely also agree that the two-party system is like as antiquated as anything, and there's nothing exciting about voting, right now.
No.
It's my duty. I'll do it, but I think that's what, when Mike was talking about, I'm not going to change somebody's mind in email or on Facebook. I get that, but I also think about, there are whatever swing states or undecided voters that they exist. So like there is some point in like when we're on stage, like encouraging people even to vote,
Yeah.
I really feel like that is a message that, well, it is essentially nonpartisan. But if you think about how many people just are going to vote and know how they're going to vote, how many people are going to vote but haven't decided yet, those people I can't quite understand. And then how many people beyond that are just not going to vote or haven't planned to yet? They're the biggest group, aren't they?
They are the biggest group. That is the majority of Americans.
That is the majority. So like really that's who we all should be talking to.
Right. And it's so sad because that is the group that could most easily screw us all over in a few months. But
or save the day.
It's also it's understandable why they feel like, I think there's a lot of I was doing some calls for Bernie back when Bernie was still on the ballot. I was making some phone calls to states that were about to do their primary vote.
Right on.
And I spoke to several people while I was making those calls who, the tactic was you would call and you would ask if they were going to be voting and, if they had considered perhaps voting for Mr. Sanders and trying to be very polite and low pressure about it. But a lot of people, a surprising amount, were just like, no, I'm not voting because it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count. And I couldn't, personally, I can't say I really disagree. Our system is fucked and the Electoral College should absolutely be abolished. We need to start over.
Yeah.
But, of course, I couldn't say on the phone, like, yeah, you're right. I was like, okay, well, maybe consider Bernie. Okay, bye.
Wow.
Good for you. I mean,
But-
that's doing the work, though, because having to interface with that set of people is not comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, and the idea, again, it's like manifesting. If most if most people out there are chanting the mantra, my vote doesn't count, the system is messed up, anything I do doesn't matter, like that is being manifested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to contribute to that. I'm obviously going to vote. I voted in the primaries. I will be voting.
Yeah. I feel like we're on the same page, like discouraged, but voting.
Yeah.
I think we have to all, those of us who care, which, the three of us clearly seem to care, you have to have a foot in at least both worlds, if not more than two worlds. One of them is sort of the mainstream politics of the day. You can't just abandon. But there is this sort of topic, and it sounds like a negative connotation, of abandonment, which is, I think, tied in with what I was saying about deep local and resilient communities, is if you can sort of move beyond the limitations of the structural system and like the normal way of doing things, I think there's a lot of fruit to harvest beyond the bars of the cage, if you will. And I think we're only now starting to understand what that means. And I don't think you can completely turn your back on the establishment. You have to pay attention, keep your ear to the ground, and push the world towards a more just place. But I don't think those aren't the only tools at our disposal. And that's something I'm sort of enthusiastic to explore more, in the rest of my life, is what we can do, again, locally with each other, that's sustainable and rewarding,
So like looking for light,
Looking
like a
for
radio
light.
signal.
Yeah, whether it's a transmission from a song or a local, wooden stage from repurposed lumber where a couple hundred people gather around and share some local food. I just keep coming back to that. And, we're so lucky to live in the Hudson Valley because I think it's a stunningly beautiful place to live. And I think a lot of forward-thinking people tend to end up here, gravitate here. And I just think I guess I'm stubbornly optimistic despite my best judgment, because what the alternative just seems like such a bummer. So I continue to like just keep my eyes on the prize, and I just love to bring it back to friends like Cale Capishilin at Radio Kingston. What he does, like he works more hours a day than there are hours in the day, and it's because he cares about where he lives and the people, and connecting people, getting information, good information, new ideas,
quality streams,
good quick internet, all of it, all the tools that are at his disposal, he's putting towards building a more resilient community. I think that is just incredibly inspiring, and that's something I want to be a part of. So like, and I get to collaborate with Cale. It's like one of the great joys of my life is finding your team amongst your friends and sort of like championing each other's work and finding the places where it can cross over.
Yeah. And again, bringing it back to friends, I was thinking about like sort of two groupings of friends that we talked about, like high school or college friends or whatnot. But there's our friends who host events. Like our friend Robert Sarazen Blake is out in Bellingham, Washington. He's come out and played the hoop before. His festival is the Subdued String Band Jamboree.
Check this out. Just in the mail, I got.
Yeah, I just saw that.
I got his swag in the mail.
Oh, that's nice. They have a new bandana, new sticker to go with their online streamed festival. The logo is like a tin can on a string. It's awesome. But he's been doing this thing across the kitchen table with trading songs back and forth with friends from all around the country. So that's been cool. He just consistently stuck with that. What is it, Sundays?
He switched to Thursdays, but yeah, he's doing it once a week. His like collaborative live stream, and
and it's really fun. He does a few songs, they do a few songs, trade back and forth. And he dresses up and he puts a vase of flowers or he lights a candle. I mean, he's a showman in this really sort of sweet, down to earth, but romanticized way that I really appreciate, seeing those unique ways that people do things. Like our friend Seth Bernard in Michigan has a festival called the Earthwork Harvest Gathering, another beautiful festival that we love and have modeled the Who after to a certain extent. And he's been spending his downtime making songs, like making a new album in quarantine, and like just focusing it on recording. And that brings me to like Amy Helm and Connor Kennedy, who were like, not feeling the streaming show thing, like showing up in people's driveways and playing, little shows, drive-by concerts, or whatever they called, like roadside delivery. They had a better name. I'm not thinking of it. And then, I think of, I don't know. I just like on a stream of consciousness here, but there's also a lot of like, for me, there's a lot of moms that I'm really close with who are parents and musicians, and I'm seeing, their home lives like through social media, or the songs inspired by it, or the crazy posts, like the maddening moments and stuff. I wrote a song called Mama Don't Feel Good, like when I developed shingles in like early April from the stress of everything. And I was just like, there were these moments where I would just like get tired. It would be 3:00 and I would go lay down, which is not my norm. Usually 3:00 I like slam some espresso and keep going,
Yeah.
But I had to listen to my body and chill out and just really feel this emotional weight that was on us all. So I wrote this song, and I didn't know what to do with it. I actually sent it to one friend who's a mom who was posting about her depression, like very honestly on Facebook. And I was just so in awe and just loving her honesty and wanted to give her this song. And she just like totally loved it and felt it. And so then we, shared it with our patrons and sang it at our next Sad Songs late night stream. So there are these moments of like, friends, friends through song, friends through, creative online performance strategies or in-person strategies.
And I know that we all want to do so much more than we're able to do in any given moment, but I think it's important to remember that those little offerings are hugely helpful.
Yeah.
Like a song that lifts somebody out of a depression is actually a pretty wonderful contribution
I don't know
and
that
the
I
act
lifted
of,
her
like,
out of
paying
her
enough
depression. I don't want to
attention.
claim that.
Well, but even if you did it for just the 3 minutes that the song was happening,
Right.
and maybe like 3 minutes while she's enjoying the afterglow of a cool song, that I think.
Well, and not just that, she related to the song, but also that, I'm sure you cared enough to see that, she was posting this stuff and was kind of like reaching out, and like you reached out to her, and like, yeah, it's all, connection is so huge.
Those
and
are
I'm
important
very glad
victories,
that
right.
all of this has come up. And you've really got me thinking about the divide between that sort of like the homesteading, I'm gonna go grow my own food and put up a big fence and have a lot of guns and like I've got mine, and like I feel like as much as, like you said, I respect the homesteading, and I grow my own food as much as I can as well, and I would love to have more space and be able to just be fully self-sufficient. But I also, if I had that kind of ability, I would want to be sharing it, and I would want, to be part of a community that
Right.
shared their own skills and their own, like it's very, I think we're kind of branching into the folks who want to just, and it's a very capitalist kind of attitude too, the whole, like, I got mine, like, it's not my problem what you have or don't have. But it's everybody's problem, and that's the problem. Like, we're all on this planet, and I love the concept of deep local, because one of the biggest things that we can do to save the planet is to start producing food locally and sharing food locally and buying food locally. And that includes meat, whether you're a carnivore or not. Like, we should be making the meat industries local. We should be buying from small farms. We should be doing vegetables. We should be doing everything locally. And that would help so much. So yeah, I love the deep local idea, and I like, that you've kind of put this germ in my head of, this other kind of manifestation of selfishness versus community. And I think we all need to be thinking about that a lot.
Yeah, and one thing I love that, like, a lot of those things you just rattled off, it's like, like the farmers market, or I just joined the Kingston Co-op last week to help them with their fundraising. Like, it feels really good to make those little contributions. But I love that something like a farmers market there's a little bit of a festival element to it, right? Like, often there's some music,
totally.
and there's that book, Surviving the Future. What is it called? I'm blanking on the name of the book. Is it Surviving the Future?
I don't know.
Anyway, it's another book that Kale turned me on to, but the author sort of makes this claim about the power of what he calls festival. And I don't think that necessarily means it could be everything from the farmers market to the little folk festival. I don't think he's really so much talking about like the Bonnaroos and whatnot, but like just
the power of Coachella,
that where people locally come together to enjoy what they have to offer, be it food,
yes,
music, and community. And I think that's sort of free for the taking no matter where you live. I think it's easy, well, maybe not easy, but it's there. It's a format that a lot can be done with.
And when you're talking about like buying into a food co-op or farmers market, or like supporting an endeavor, like that's been a new development over the past like 10 years, maybe, like the Kickstarter or the GoFundMe. It's like a cool technological solution to the fact that people like to do that for each other. People enjoy like throwing tips in the jar, so there's all these digital tip jars and things going on. And I like that, that's a phenomenon that exists because it represents a good part of humanity. And I will say that our Patreon page in the time of quarantine, instead of dwindling because everybody's in a tight spot, it's growing, and that's wild, and it's so inspiring. It's like doubly inspiring. And recently, I would say a huge percentage of our new patrons are actually close friends that just never joined it before, but they're joining it because they miss us or I don't know why, or they want to like see that cool video that we only shared with patrons or whatever. But
or they're like, man, those guys really are artists, and now is the time I really need to like,
Yeah.
step up.
But it's beautiful. Like, we support our friends, all the time on that kind of platform. And it is another example of Mike's term, the karma economy, because so many systems are so outdated and so messed up, like the two-party system or the electoral college or schools or,
private property, police,
or
like go down the line. Yeah.
Cops,
incarceration.
Media, commercial television, like all of it is pretty toxic.
And it's pretty old school,
Right.
it's pretty,
it's embedded.
It's fun. It's fun for me to watch. Like, we haven't had cable TV in a really long time, so we visited Mike's parents and got to see like real TV for a little while, and it made me so grateful that we don't have cable.
I think that's where
God,
I first keyed in on the trauma that can be inflicted on just being exposed to that, especially if you're not used to it.
Right.
It's not like they were watching anything
No.
more hardcore than MSNBC, but I found it to be traumatizing because that's not.
And yeah, it's just nonstop, and like the constant scrolling of the headlines and the graphics all over the screen, and look at this, look at that, and the numbers are fluctuating, and what do they mean? I don't know, but it's stressing me
I
out.
don't find it to be.
I know. I was like, can we please binge Flea Market Flip again? That
Yeah.
was better.
Yeah.
That's like people with repurposed stuff. I'm way more into that.
We'll make a coffee table out of this.
It's-
Everything was a coffee table,
on
and
Long Island.
we could laugh. So that was good.
Thanks for the recommendation.
I think a lot of what we're sort of like kicking around, which I love because I could talk about this stuff all day, is and there's a song on our record called Beyond Civilization, which just it's the title of a Daniel Quinn book, which as soon as I read the title, even I was like, what does that even mean? Like Beyond Civilization? Because anytime I went sort of down the rabbit hole of civilization, capital C, and all this like destroy civilization, synonymous with capitalism, but the idea that you can move beyond it was something I never occurred to me, like sort of like a non-violent way of relegating something to insignificance, like to build something better that relegates what came before it as insignificant. It's like to move beyond it.
It's like your song from our last record, Sunshiner, where the chorus said, yes, my daddy was a miner. I'm going to be a sunshiner. And I just love that line because it's like honoring the generation before. It's not saying anything bad about them. It's just sort of like, that happened. Now this is going to happen.
Right.
And we all have to work together to not be embroiled in the 24-hour news cycle of what is happening this minute, and to really envision the next thing together in a positive way and make it exciting for all to take part in, because
it's evolution and it's manifestation, and it's both two things we've been talking about in this conversation, which again I love. And another thing I read, this like the power of manifestation can't be overstated, and it's partly a lot of people look at it as just basic physics, right? And I haven't like done my delving into that so much to completely understand it, but I do believe in it. And this whole idea of people who believe that evolution came to an end with man, which is a pretty universal belief in our culture.
Yeah, but
by
it's such a
men.
goofy and self-centered thing to think.
What I mean? By human.
No, exactly.
But think about the other side of that. This is again something from Daniel Quinn, is if you believe that life came to an end with human beings, that we are manifesting the end.
Yeah.
People don't think of it that way. They think, oh, this is the arrival, and now we finally made it. It's actually what you're manifesting is the end of the line. This is where it stops.
Yeah, and I love the beauty of always learning, always growing, always shifting. I mean, the only guarantee is change, right? So
Yeah.
any
Actively
concept
evolving.
of like, we've arrived and here it is, it's even in
It's
my old
short-sighted
theater
to
days
think
where,
that
right, you
that's
would like
true.
rehearse for 3 months and then you'd be like, okay, it's the show. Still, every show is different. And eventually that show would close and you might not see those people again. And it's like, it's, large format or small format, there's constant change, and just welcoming that and rejoicing in that is where I like to be. We've said this before, like our older stuff, like from the early 2000s was all like, really trying to point fingers and sing about what we were against, the political songs that we sang. we're very much like trying to call out injustices, and that's cool, but we're so much more about trying to paint a beautiful picture of the next thing right now. You know, like even in the dark songs, there's some part of the song that's saying like, picture this, you know, a boat on a river with tangerine.
Right. Even at that Connecticut show we did in the park, the woman who booked us, who was lovely, but after the show, she's like, I sort of missed the political songs. I was like, was she listening? It's like, we're not really hitting people over the head with them like we did when we were 25.
Really? She said that?
She did.
That's awesome. I love that she misses like the more strident,
that's what she missed,
lefty songs.
The angry stuff,
Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
But I love that. I love that attitude and that kind of, you know, focus on manifesting the good instead of just wallowing in the bad. I'm going to try to adopt a little bit more of that myself.
And it's like they say you catch more flies with honey or whatever. Like the idea is it's hopefully going to have actually a greater impact.
Yeah, I think it will. I think, you know, it's been proven time and again. There's been experiments with, positivity versus negativity and, the words and the energy you put out having physical effects on the world around you. So it's not nonsense. And it's a hard thing to keep in mind sometimes right now because we are so bombarded with despair. But I think it's really important that we try to keep that in mind and try to manifest the good. And that, I think, is a perfect place to leave this episode because otherwise I'm just going to spiral back down the rabbit hole.
I love it.
Yay, let's stay with positive manifestations.
So before I let you guys go, where can we find your music and how can we support you and what's happening next? Do you have some more streams coming up?
Well, the Summer Hoot will be at the end of August on the 29th. Our website is themammals.love, Love, and our Hoot website is hoot.love. So that's our vibe. You can find our new album Nanette there. You can find our Patreon link there and all sorts of good stuff.
And any live streams we do add, because I'm sure we will be adding some. It all goes, websites may seem like products of a bygone era, but they're super useful and updated. Themammals.love is a great place to find out.
It's a great website.
It's a sharp looking.
It's an excellent site. You're gonna enjoy it.
It's got good vibes.
But
it's got a good beat. You can
we're on the
dance to it.
Instagram, we're on the Facebook
exactly.
and stuff like that. And we just love meeting new people online now that we can't meet new people in person too much. But folks can access us pretty easily and write to us and interact.
We're really grateful that you started this podcast. I mean, this is sort of a new exploration for you, MK, and I think it's wonderful. I've listened to a bunch of them. I loved your interview with Stephanie again because we've been working with her so closely.
Yay.
But congratulations for getting this off the ground and planting that seed.
Thank you so much, and thank you for listening, and thank you very much to both of you for coming on today. This was amazing. As always, the time flew. I don't know where it goes.
It's great. I love it.
Likewise. Yeah, I know. Where's the time gone?
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to More Music Please Quarantine Beat. Follow the show on Instagram at moremusic.podcast and check out the website moremusicpodcast.com for new episodes. Questions or comments, email moremusic.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks to DJ Scully, Michael Cadnar, and James Stewart for the catchy theme song you're hearing now. I'm MK Burnell. Talk to you next time.